Hi guys, Nomis here. Welcome back to Nomishavn for episode number 51. So in the last episode I built the royal palace of Nomishavn with its surrounding park. And in this episode I built out part of the area on one end of the park. The center of this area is a metro station called Friedenberg Station, named after the Friedenberg neighborhood which surrounds it and borders the palace park. In many Scandinavian cities, and also Europe in general, you have a sharp contrast between beautiful classical buildings from the 1800s and big towering modern buildings which are more focused on functionality over aesthetics. And this will shape this episode. For a long time there have been tracks here at ground prepared for a metro station, and today I finally get to building this station. This station has been here since the early 1900s as part of the early build-out of the metro network. It has seen a lot of changes through the years, and it has a very modern look today. Friedenberg has always been a pretty prestigious neighborhood, but at the time when the metro was built out, it had more of a suburban feel with larger houses, and the station reflected this with a pretty low profile. As the population exploded shortly after, the area densified and eventually there was a need to modernize this station. On both sides of the station there is a ramp for accessibility, as well as stairs. To cross the tracks to switch platforms, there are some simple and modern stairs. It was deemed too expensive to build an elevator to get across the tracks from the platform here, as it wouldn't see much use. But there will be other ways to cross the tracks for disabled people nearby. To build the station in game I use a lot of IMT with my regular set of props, and for the support for the stairs I modify some highway pillars with PO to make them fit. I had an idea for some buildings in front of the stations, and I didn't quite have the space for it, so I changed the road layout a little to make this possible. On one side of the station I wanted to have 2 office towers, which I imagine were built here in the 50s or 60s and considered modern at the time. The idea was for them to have some height to them, but not to the scale of being skyscrapers. And I think these 2 assets fit that perfectly. I create a gap between them because I need some stairs up to what will be the main build of this episode, an elevated plaza going across the tracks of the metro. I don't have a specific inspiration for this place, but I know that there was this obsession in many European cities during the 1950s to build above the street level, especially with things like elevated plazas. This will be my version of that in Nomishavn. The first thing I do is put down 2 rows of some modern stairs going up to where the plaza will sit. The foundation for the plaza will be old concrete, so I use some cubes with concrete textures and PO and shape them to what I want. It creates a concrete platform that goes into the sides of the buildings and across the tracks above them. At the other side of the tracks there is less space for stairs, so I make a design with 2 sideways stairs, meeting up at a stair going the final length down to street level. To support all of this I use the same highway pillars as I used for the stair overpass of the station. The path design to make the stairs is a bit complex, so I do them away from the build and then drag it over with move it to adjust them to the stairs, using node controller to manipulate the nodes so I can make them fit as perfect as possible. On top of the concrete platform, I use some ploppable pavement surfaces, which allows me to put decals at this level. For the surface I found some nice and time appropriate decals. Around the edge I lined it with some curbs, which will hold some glass fences that I'm adding later on for that modern look. There's been a lot of stairs so far, but I'm also thinking about accessibility, like I mentioned earlier. On each side of the tracks leading up to the elevated plaza, I make a winding network of ramps, which should have an acceptable gradient to be accessible. What I found doing my research is that ADA allows up to 8.3% gradient, and I use this as a guideline, and these ramps should be around there. For the elevated plaza, I wanted a nice focal point, and decided that this should be some cool looking fountains. My idea was this modern concrete fountains. I didn't really find an asset which had the right look or size, so I decided to make it from scratch. I used PO cubes with concrete textures again to make this. First I measured it up at the plaza, and then I dragged it away to design the whole thing. I have a slightly different texture for the edges to the bottom of the fountain to create some variety. For the water I used the water surface props stacked twice like I've done before, and I recolored the concrete bottom a slight blue to make it have a stronger water look. In the middle I make some basic shapes out of concrete and put these metal thingies, which I don't know the name of, to have water running out of. I tried to put some steam props for an extra effect, but I removed them later because the steam would show up on the tracks beneath also, which looked kind of weird. To make the fountain more functional, I placed these seat markers on the edges, and people actually walk up and sit there, which I think adds a lot of life. The fine details I add are some lights and water jets. After finishing the fountains, I add some last touches to the plaza with lights, planters, benches and trash cans, as well as line the whole thing with the glass fences I mentioned earlier. still have some empty concrete space around the station, and I filled some of it with planters and other details. Next to the entrance pathway I have a row of classical buildings, which I imagine are mostly hotels and restaurants, and further away there's also a few apartment buildings. The layout with roads and the bike path was a bit tight here, so I rearranged it a little to make more sense. Just to start filling out some of the grids across the other side of the station, I mixed some city block designs with classical apartment buildings and copied them over a few times, rotating them to create some variation. I'm also adding in some other details and adding in a small football field and a tennis court. This road is one of the major roads in the district and leads directly into the bridge to Björgvin, so I figured some more safety for pedestrians would be suitable. Along the sidewalk where we have buildings, I create a barrier with street planters, while on the other side of the street with the bike path, I line the sidewalk with some nice classical bollards. So anyways, that is it for this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it if you made it this far, and thank you for sticking around to the end. A like, comment and subscribe would be greatly appreciated and help me grow the channel. I do also have a Patreon should you wish to support me further. Have a great rest of your day, stick around for some cinematics, and hope to see you in the next one.